This is Hope Reserve, where we think through Bible theology and worldview. In this episode, we're going to look at Zechariah chapter 3 and a vision of Joshua the priest, the sign that he represents, and what this prophecy foreshadows for all of us. So this is Zechariah chapter 3. Then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right to accuse him. And the Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan. Indeed, the Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. Is this not a log snatched from the fire?" Now Joshua was clothed in filthy garments, and was standing before the angel. And he responded and said to those who were standing before him, saying, "Remove the filthy garments from him." Again he said to him, "See, I have taken your guilt away from you, and I will clothe you with festive robes." Then I said, "Have them put on a clean headband on his head." So they put a clean headband on his head and clothed him with garments, while the angel of the Lord was standing by. And the angel of the Lord admonished Joshua, saying, "The Lord of armies says this, if you walk in my ways and perform my service, then you will both govern my house and be in charge of my courtyards. And I will grant you free access among those who are standing here. Now listen, Joshua, you high priest, and your friends who are sitting in front of you. Indeed, they are men who are a sign. For behold, I am going to bring in my servant, the branch. For behold, the stone that I have put before Joshua, on one stone are 7 eyes. Behold, I am going to engrave in an inscription on it, declares the Lord of armies, and I will remove the guilt of that land in one day. And on that day, declares the Lord of armies, every one of you will invite his neighbor to sit under his vine and under his fig tree." So Zechariah is being shown a vision by the same angel that had shown him the previous 3 visions. In verse 1, the setting of the verse is a courtroom scene. So in this scene, we see Satan as the accuser, Joshua as the high priest. Joshua the high priest is the defendant, and the Lord is the judge. In verse 2, the Lord rebukes Satan for his accusation. Because Joshua belongs to the Lord, it seems that God has redeemed him for his purposes. Verse 3, Joshua is wearing filthy garments. This is the case that Satan brings against him. The filthy garments seem to symbolize sinfulness or moral impurity. Verses 4 through 5, the Lord has removed Joshua's guilt and clothed him with festive garments. The filthy garments or moral impurity is removed. The Lord covered him with clean and appropriate clothes fit for a priest, and it shows that Joshua is now accepted in the presence of God, which later comes into fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ. And then these clothes are also suitable to be worn in the presence of the King of Kings. So this is what happens when we trust in Jesus. He took on our punishment that our sins deserve, and then he removes our filth, our sin, our moral impurity, and he covers us with his righteousness, so that we can be acceptable to God. So it's a great foreshadowing of that. Verses 6 through 7, in this invitation to walk in the ways of the Lord and faithfully perform God's service is a sign of how Jesus would faithfully and obediently serve God, even to death. And in doing so, he took away the guilt in a single day. Then verses 8 through 10, this vision of Joshua the high priest is a sign or a symbol of what the branch would do. In a single day, the branch would remove the guilt of Jerusalem. So the branch is also spoken of through both the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah. In Jeremiah 33:15 it says, "In those days and at that time I will make a righteous branch of David sprout, and he shall execute justice and righteousness on earth." So the branch is also referred to as the servant in Isaiah 52 and 53. In both cases, the branch and the servant will remove sin through their obedience and faithfulness unto death. And Isaiah 53 is the clearest prophecy that talks about how this would be accomplished. Isaiah predicts that the suffering servant would be pierced for our iniquities and would be cut off from the land of the living for the wrongdoing of his people. In Isaiah 53:11 it says, "As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied, and by the knowledge of the righteous one, my servant will justify many, for he will bear their wrongdoings." So again, hundreds of years before Jesus, it talks about the branch and the servant making atonement for sin. And that's consistent with the New Testament theology of what Jesus did. When he died, he made atonement for the sins of those who trust in him. So I think it's interesting that God brought everyone together in these events in such a way that Joshua the high priest would be the sign. And I think it's interesting because when we look at the Old Testament, even the Joshua that came after Moses, who helped lead the Israelites into the promised land, and then this Joshua the high priest, in some way they're a sign of Jesus, and Jesus is the Greek name for Joshua or Yeshua. So it's interesting that even this symbol, even this Old Testament, this imagery, this symbol, this prophecy that is kind of a sign of what Jesus would do, it even has his name. And I think that's interesting that God would bring everything about, that it would be fulfilled like that. So verse 9, the stone is likely associated with the priest attire, which along with other priestly robes were part of the Day of Atonement ritual. So it's interesting that the Day of Atonement in the removing of sin and guilt, there's kind of this connection, because what Jesus did on the cross was to make atonement for sins, kind of make it right between God and humans. So verse 10, the phrase "on that day" refers to a future reign of the Messiah when humans will live at peace with one another. Obviously, that's not it's not today. So we see all of the contention and trouble that nations have, the way things are now. But it looks to the day, and throughout history, there was always wars. There was always people fighting other people. But that's one of the most amazing promises, is that someday the nations are going to live at peace. So this vision is a prophecy of what the branch would do to save people from sin. So hundreds of years before Jesus walked the earth, the prophets foretold his coming, and that through obedience and faithfulness, he would remove the guilt of his people and justify many. He would also clothe his people with righteousness. I think it's important that we take prophecy seriously, because only God knows the future, and only God can predict the future with as much detail as we see in the Bible. And it's really a testament to the truth and accuracy of the Bible, because you can't have prophecies that predict the future be 100% accurate like the Bible is, unless it's from God. And it's also really important because it shows that Jesus is God too, because these prophecies about him, there were so many that he fulfilled, that and so many of them that were out of his control, that it couldn't have been just some guy that was trying to fulfill, trying to conjure up these fulfillments so that people would think he's a Messiah. The only way that Jesus could fulfill the prophecies that he fulfilled is that he is God, and that only God knows the future. So it's pretty cool when you look into this prophecy, and I hope you've enjoyed learning about Zechariah chapter 3, and I just want to thank you for listening.